So good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. After all the arm twisting by Ron, he's gotten me into my first position as a moderator of a panel discussion. So I'll try to do my best along with this distinguished group here to kind of get us through our topic for tonight. And I'm assuming that some of you have seen the program or you've seen some of the flyers that have given you the title of the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. Have you? You have to excuse me, I'm getting in a teacher mode here. Making sure everybody gets involved in this. And if you haven't, it's the Equity Playbook, using sports for inclusive change. Now, obviously, the offshoot of this topic tonight is the whole topic of DEI and where that's gone or is headed as it relates to the country overall. And because of that, with Ron as a part of the committee that put this together, we thought that we would dive into what would be an alternative discussion about DEI, and that is this wider notion about inclusion. But there's really no better place to start with this topic than to go back to DEI and at least engage the panelists in some initial comments about any thoughts that they may have or any experiences that they may have had with DEI and the impact that it's had either on them or organizations that they've been a part of. So we'll just open it up.
I'm happy to go first.
Go ahead, start.
You want to go? Yeah, happy to go first. One, I want to thank Professor Thomas for the invite and all that he's done at this university. Does tremendous work in the journalism school. So you look at this panel, this is a great panel. Like, great people here, great moderator. So thank you, one. When it comes to DEI and what I've seen, so I don't know how many of you folks were here in Atlanta in 2014. I worked for the Atlanta Hawks and State Farm Marina. We had a president and general manager at that time who made some racist remarks. We had owners who made some remarks about the people coming to the games. At that point, it was Phillips Arena, saying that there weren't enough black families, that many dads were missing. Just went down sort of went down the rabbit hole of racist sort of thoughts about black families and what's missing, and the dance team and the music being too black. That owner sold the team very quickly. The president and general manager who made those statements was removed from the team. And as an organization, we had to make amends with the community. So I don't know how many, if it rings a bell, you can nod your head. One of the things that we did, and we did a lot of things besides an outright apology, was we made a commitment to hire a chief diversity and inclusion officer. And at that time in 2014, it was the first in the NBA. 2014, so not that long ago. Proud to say several teams in the NBA followed suit soon after. Throughout the NFL, a couple teams joined in. And it was more than just an apology, right? It's easy to say, hey, we're going to do this and just for optics, but that role kept us internally and externally just like online, on mission, making sure that our hiring practices were fine. And they were. So I don't want to say that there was some problem. There were a couple of comments by two individuals that did not extend within the organization, but I think having someone with that as their job, as their lens in everything that we do, in the way that we hire people, in the companies that we align with, was really instrumental and pivotal. And I think it really spoke to a lot of our fans as sort of a checks and balance, like, okay, I trust the Hawks are going to do it right. And the young lady we hired in Zenga Shaw is one of the best in the world in the diversity and inclusion space. Just like a great thinker. So that's how it's impacted me and why it's important to me.
All right, Garin, can I Can I put you on the spot a little bit?
Yeah.
What the Hawks went through and the steps that they took. I mean, it's an amazing case study of what to do, how to handle things forthright, and being very prompt with it. One of the things that you guys did post 2020 about being a voting precinct, and you were the first team to do that. Can you share the steps that came with that?
Absolutely. So Tara, at one point, worked for the genius I work for right now, Steve Koonin, who is the president and CEO of the Atlanta Hawks. So in 2020, we're all locked in our homes, right? So we're all watching TV nonstop. And outside CNN Center, which is connected essentially to State Farm Arena, it is. Our CEO is watching, seeing the destruction that's going on, like, people rioting, and CNN, for better or worse, it's a lightning rod for any and every group. If anything is going on in the city, people want to get on TV, right? Because they're trying to get attention. So CNN is instant attention. So they go to CNN and they start throwing stuff and they have their rallies. So our CEO one night, probably 11 a.m. or 11 p.m. better yet, is watching what's going on, and he just gets the brilliant idea: we need to do something, but what can we do? What can a sports team do to help in this situation? And at that point, we weren't playing games, right? COVID, there was the bubble going on in Orlando, which we weren't good enough to be in it. We were part of the Elite Eight. It's not a great moment there in our history. But the idea came that voting was coming up, and the way that everyone can have a voice is through their vote. And at that point, the 6-foot rule, right? Social distancing was a thing. So can you social distance effectively for voting in your library, which is where like 85% of voting happens, in libraries and small public spaces? And no, you can't. So Steve's like, we are not using our building. This is the perfect way to use our building. So our full-time staff, myself included, we spent a couple weeks that October, I want to say, because we could only do early voting. We became poll workers. And, I'm proud to say that we had, I think, the most voters in the nation at State Farm Arena. Mostly because they could come do it in an arena. We made it cool, gave stickers and had music. You can't really do a lot. The rules about voting are strict, and they continue to get stricter, right? There are rules saying you can't give water to people waiting in line. But at that time, we were able to make it an experience and make it safe. And that was Steve's idea and his way of what can a sports team do to really help and make change in a really chaotic time.
Yandrick?
Yeah, Ron, thank you again for the invite. This is my first time on this campus. I actually went to a PWI, I ran track for a PWI, so I appreciate the legacy and history here, just the walls, it's amazing. I can feel the energy, so you all are just, please benefit from this. This is amazing. So I'm the founder of the Diversity in Sports Hub, which is a nonprofit. We expose young adults to sports industry roles, and we just create pathways for them, and we pull in conversations like this. We create workshops and things of that nature. But again, the name of our nonprofit is Diversity in Sports Hub. We have a major partnership with the PGA and an Ally Bank. I also have my golf tournament, my Paraison Golf Invitational. That's been sold out for the past 6 years, and we have major partnerships with the Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets, the Carolina Panthers, Porsche, and a bunch of other large corporations. I have a different perspective. We haven't had any issues. We've had zero issues with sponsorship, with partnerships. I think it really comes down to choosing the right company, or the right entity, like the Hawks, who actually care and have programs in place. Individuals that I've worked with, they've changed their names to Chief Diversity, Chief Inclusion Officer, and things of that nature, so they've had to shift pivot from those names, but they still have those functions in place, just kind of masked in a different way, right? So yeah, we've had a great experience as we still receive a lot of support. We have a long relationship, as I said, with the PGA, and we have more events coming. We just had our last event at Howard University last week, and so we'll see if we can get something going here.
In my former role, when I was at Turner Sports, which is TNT and TBS, and the circus that is inside the NBA, we did a lot of thinking about DEI and implementing different programs for employees, and then also young students and young graduates who wanted to come into the field. But one of the most impactful things that we started to hit on was pipeline building, because we were finding in television there were certain sectors of the industry, like our sales team, who there wasn't any diversity in hiring, and they were telling us, well, we're not getting candidates who are qualified to be in these roles. And we realized we had a very big need to build a pipeline of qualified candidates long before they graduate, so that you can come in with some experience, some know-how, and get exposed to different parts of the industry. I had the great experience of overseeing all the people that you see that are famous on camera, and that's a great job, but there's hundreds of jobs behind the scenes in sports that are well-paying, that are very fulfilling, and you get to be the boss of the people on the air, so that's even better. But we instituted a program working with President Obama's My Brother's Keeper organization, and it was one of the most powerful things that I'd ever had the pleasure of being a part of, where we brought young men from Chicago and brought them to our live sports productions. And it wasn't just that they got to come and watch. So we were very specific and very intentional that it wasn't a shadowing opportunity, it was a work opportunity, so that they were actually paid and actually spent multiple days in a position to actually get hands-on experience. So the first one we did was The Match, which was a golf tournament that we had with Tom Brady out in Big Sky, Montana. And I had never been to Montana at that point in my life. And these young men from the south side of Chicago had certainly never been to Montana. And they were out there flying drones. They were part of graphics. They were running audio and getting real hands-on experience to help build that pipeline and get exposed to the industry. So it became more about, instead of just access, instead of just exposure, but how do you give real tangible experience where someone can say, I've spent qualified time doing this and can now be qualified to be part of the equation in the future.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly close from maybe a little different perspective of literally was here in this exact same room my senior year at Morehouse, and Spike Lee was speaking, and he was talking about just the notion of, when you think about professional sports leagues and the amount of underrepresented minorities that make up the percentages of the athletes themselves. So 80% in the NBA, 70% in the NFL, like all these crazy stats, but the inverse of those same groups in terms of management positions and behind the scenes and off the field roles. And he brought this concept of gatekeepers. And he just kind of spoke about how, as an analogy, why he decided to pursue, being an independent production shop was because he found that in the, film and TV industry, this notion of the gatekeepers that were deciding what type of movies and shows you may produce and who was going to star in those roles was a very small, tight group that had, a very kind of biased decision on how they wanted to pursue things. And so he felt not just the opportunity, but the responsibility to become one of those gatekeepers themselves, to be able to broaden the inclusion and diversity, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And so for me, hearing that as a senior at Morehouse who was interested in pursuing a career in sports, that same concept kind of stayed, with me. And so I always kind of thought about, just from a mentality standpoint, as I continue to pursue the side of the industry that was the inverse of what you saw on the field or on the court, the same kind of held true. So this was long before the term DEI was even really a thing. And I think that's important because it's really a mindset. You can insert letters, change out letters. It doesn't really matter in terms of what it's called. It's more about the action behind the words. And so for me, it's just kind of full circle, to kind of harken back to that moment in this exact same room. Spike Lee talking about that in what would have been 2007, and now in 2025, the mindset is still the same. So.
Okay, thank you for the opening look with regard to DEI and where we are. I want to say one thing as a housekeeping matter before we continue with our discussion. You have the index cards there near you, on your seat or around you. If you have any questions, jot your questions down on the index card, and then near the end of our panel discussion, we'll entertain the questions and have you come to a microphone and share your questions with the panelists. I just urge you to be as concise as you can in your writing, as we talk about all the time in our classes, and just make sure your questions are pinpoint, okay? So we've got our initial thoughts with regard to DEI and some of the impact that it's had on some of you. I guess the question remains now in terms of what we've seen on a national level as relates to the assault on DEI from a very national perspective. The obvious question is there still that internal will amongst organizations to adhere to the emissions that were part of DEI? And with the shift in terminology that Yandrick referred to, do you think that that mission is still alive?
I can jump in. I think the easy answer is yes, but I think one of the things, especially when you think about from a business standpoint, that gets lost in this a little bit is, I think that there's the moral, rationale, which is clear, and I'm proud to be a part of an organization that I think fundamentally believes in that. But I think what gets lost in this discussion is it's also good business, right? And so, for us on the Falcons side, one of kind of our internal things we say all the time is like, we're not the Falcons, like we are the Atlanta Falcons, right? So we're here as an organization that is trying to serve and thrive in this Atlanta community, which is fundamentally very diverse. So for us to succeed, again, not just from do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, but in tandem with that, do the right thing because it's good business, it only makes sense to have a strategy that takes into account the multi-layered diversity of the audiences, communities that you serve. And then based on that, then to be able to successfully do that, you need to make sure that you have a staff that can properly understand and serve those markets. And fundamentally in that is to have a very diverse and talented staff. And that concept of diversity ranges in a lot of different, lenses: racial, age, demographic, gender, background, location, like all of these things play such a strong role, in that. And so I think it's imperative to always continue to understand, especially through some of these lenses, when again, different terms and how we kind of define it can be debated, but there's a foundational do the right thing from a moral standpoint. But then on top of that is a very smart commercial and economic standpoint. I think why that matters is because when then you're in different rooms and different spaces, people can have different point of views on a lot of things, but especially from a business side, people tend to agree that if the bottom line goes up, they tend to be receptive to those conversations. And to me, the notion of DEI, again, has a very strong strategic moral standpoint as well as business standpoint, and we try to articulate both.
Before we get to it, Tara, let me add one to that and see if we can maybe set the preface it for you to make your comments after that. You were talking about the impact that your business has in terms of adhering to a strong inclusion model. Given the trend nationally, there are people out there that have kind of the reverse thought about that if you do these things in an inclusive manner, that you're running contrary to what the national message has been. For those companies, they seem to have almost a different game plan in terms of diminishing or reducing the things that you're talking about there, Steve, from the standpoint of your organization. Just wanted to bring that out because you were talking about the business side of it. There's another side of people out there that look at it from the business or the political perspective that kind of lends to this whole issue of DEI being further
Yeah, I think that's why it's always important to have data to back your point of view. Like, we're very big on using data to reinforce whatever position that you have, because reasonable minds can differ, smart people can disagree, and often a lot can get lost in debate and translation. So we try to make sure that we reinforce what we say and how we say it through data that reinforces what we're trying to do.
To that point, though, Charles, we've seen it, right? We've seen government funding being pulled because of it. We've seen what they're doing to NPR and public broadcasting because of DEI and because of what they're saying is now the swing to the other way of what the majority believes in. So the question of does DEI matter? 100%. Will everyone care? No. I mean, if the sooner that we're more transparent, that not everybody's going to buy in, especially anymore, I think the better that we can have strategies about how do we push forward and what is our strategy, because they are going to pull money and they are going to pull funding, and are they going to care about being forthright and transparent in their transactions? I've been a part of organizations and companies and groups, and I've seen people comfortably hire people who they're familiar with and look like them and make them the most comfortable. One of the best tools against that is being prepared, is being your authentic self and doing your best. There are a lot of young people who graduate or are looking for internships or roles or opportunities and come in unprepared. I've been on the other side of that table and been very blown away by young people saying, I want this job. And I'm like, great, tell me about this organization, and can't name one thing. Or don't have a background, or don't have any questions prepared in advance, or have forgotten their own information. So you can combat people not wanting to give you a shot by being the best shot that they actually have. Working in sports as a woman, I've been in sports for a long time. I started way back in the late 1900s, which is a long time for a lot of you. But back then there weren't a lot of women in sports, certainly not a lot of black women. And people would ask me a lot, how do you work in a male-dominated industry? What do you do if you're uncomfortable? What about when you're one of one? All of those things. And, I got very comfortable with that fact. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna be a unicorn, I'm gonna put on a show. And putting on a show meant being prepared, asking questions, being about my business, doing all of the things. So if they're gonna remember me because I am the only woman or the only person of color or both, they're also going to remember that I may have surprised and or impressed them.
That is fantastic, and Tara does have an amazing brand that you've created over the years, so that's to your point. One thing I want to mention is one of my board members, Isu Met. He's the Chief Inclusion Officer for the Orlando Magic. Him and I had a conversation a month ago when he was he was worried about his job, about whether his job was going to be eliminated because of this DEI push or lack of. And he was renewed, and his this CEO, the president, decided to keep him on, and they have a new strategy, a new plan to engage more in that space. So just saying that to say that there is hope, and that you have individuals, like I said, like the Hawks and others that are doing the work and that are still in the space doing the work. So yeah.
And I'll build off what you and what Shannon said, because Shannon, I think your answer was so comprehensive, and being on the team side, it's good for business. And not only that, we know our audience. We are the Atlanta Hawks. He is the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta is what matters, right? And if we're being true to Atlanta and we're being true to our audience, it's an inclusive audience. The last thing Yandrick said that I think was important, talking about his colleague with the Orlando Magic. So I bet 7 years ago his title was Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer.
Exactly.
And now it's just inclusion. So I think sometimes we get caught up in the wordings and the letters, and not necessarily the work in the programs. If we worry about the words like diversity, it's been tested. That's what people in marketing do. They test. How does that word hit people? So when you see less CDIOs and you see more CIOs, diversity doesn't work for people, but inclusion does. So let's not get worried about letters. Let's get worried about the work and the purpose, because the mandate still exists and the work still needs to be done.
I'm glad you clarified that, all of you as panelists. Great answers on that. So we put to rest DEI, now our terminology is inclusiveness. What strategies have you experienced, either personally or within your corporate setting, to address this issue of not so much DEI, but just the level of inclusiveness that we want to be as an organization?
I guess I can start. I think a major strategy is working with organizations like mine, nonprofits, collaborations with the community, different organizations, the Congressional Black Caucus. I think the partnerships in the community is what helps in building those relationships and continuing that. So we've benefited tremendously from those types of partnerships.
Yeah, I can say legitimately that we haven't changed any of our programming at all.
Yeah, I'll give a tactical answer, because as head of marketing, like, it's a big part of like my job description, right? Not just in terms of kind of how I feel about it as an individual. And this is just one small example to kind of make a larger point. So attending an NFL game is the most expensive ticket for an individual sport in America. It's just the amount of games, the popularity of the sport, it just kind of is what it is. And so we recognize that. And so when we think about, okay, how do you continue to provide access for a very diverse community, again, from a lot of different lenses, one of them being economic, right? So one opportunity that we do to kind of bring this home is that there's only 10 NFL games each team kind of hosts a year, but we've done this now for several years, is that we have double-digit training camp practices that are free and open to the public. So that is just a very small example of recognizing, again, the economic realities of attending our game. How do we continue to provide in-person touch points, for our fans? That's one of a gazillion ways that we address inclusion in a lot of different ways, but just trying to bring home the point of there's true business tactics addressing these issues from a talent standpoint all the way to what is front-facing in terms of different kind of fan engagement strategies and everything kind of in between. So,
Allyship, too, is such a big strategy and component of it. Finding the organizations, the leaders, the other companies that you can partner with that support the same mission. So whether or not we're labeling it diversity, inclusion, inclusiveness, belonging, but who is supporting the same mission, trying to get there, continuing to open doors to HBCUs and expose students to opportunities and hiring. So finding those allies. And, allies existed in the space before we had a DEI push, right? There were other people of other backgrounds and races and genders that were helping in the mission. So identifying when people are actually bringing us into the table, to have a seat at the table.
Thank you. As we continue our conversation about this in terms of inclusion, I want to try to see if we can go inside of the corporate structure for a moment, inside of perhaps a meeting, if this happens to be a topical discussion. What items are discussed in terms of coming away with inclusion, like you said, Garin, that we are going to continue doing the things that we do as it relates to our programming, even though we may call it something else? What other considerations perhaps go into those conversations inside the corporate setting?
So all the considerations that we have are the ones that you would imagine, right? We're in such a different reality and time where literally, we have a president, we have government where they will call people out that they don't like. Mm-hmm. They will call names, they will call institutions, they will call leagues. So when you think of considerations, obviously no one wants to be called out by the leader of the free world. That doesn't drive our mindset or the way we work. Is it in the back of our heads like, it could happen? Yeah, because weirdly, it could happen. It's not something that would happen 10 years ago. But being in PR and communications, there's the fun part, which is promoting fun things, the team, performance, and games. And there's the negative side of it, and it's crisis comms, right? So when is that situation going to arise? When is that tweet going to come from somebody saying that organization down south is doing things the wrong way? Is it something that is in the back of our mind? Yes, it doesn't drive how we do business, but certainly we want to make sure that we're serving Atlanta, the community, and we don't want to create those potential negative headlines. That's just the reality of it. I think all sports, especially the NBA, is probably a target for this institution and this government because of the diversity in the sport. And, in the bubble, there was branding all over the court that flew in 2020 that I don't know if it would be permitted or tolerated in 2025.
So, how many of you guys have taken statistics here at Morehouse so far, right? Did you like the class? Most people don't. But I think the classes, to me, is one of the most important classes because, again, this notion of data and like getting into the things. And I think one of the most important kind of themes in statistics is this concept of a trend line. So a trend line, right, basically aggregates data over time to kind of show a general theme versus one specific moment. I make that analogy because I think it relates a little bit to what Garin is saying is us as an organization, we judge more through the lens of a trend line versus one individual moment because you can't say everything you want to all the time. You have limited resources and you can't deploy those resources all the time. So what someone in one isolation may look at one situation and be like, well, why didn't the Falcons say something? Or why didn't the Hawks, say something? We have to be willing to kind of accept that, but trust that our trend line over time is proving out kind of what we're standing for. But the reality of not just business, but life, every single day, you're gonna have to make hundreds of decisions, right? And because we're in this microscopic society and so many people have access to kind of see what you're doing, people are gonna make determinations off of one-off situations. So what we try to do again is make sure that, are we making the right decisions over time from a general sense? Does our trend line reflect who we stand for and how we act? Sometimes we're gonna get it wrong, but hopefully more times we get it right, and that's kind of all you can do.
Nothing down there? Okay. Two insiders, so that's good. Look at that. But Tara, you're right.
Tara loves being independent.
Exactly.
I represent myself.
I was going to ask you, Tara, since that you're on the other side of that now, your impressions about the things that were going on the inside while you were part of the organization versus your feeling. Now, I know you were talking about feeling very liberated to be away from that structure, but if you had any additional thoughts on that.
So being in corporate, it was amazing. I was very fortunate to have great leadership. We were doing things just like Garin said with the Hawks long before we had to, long before there were mandates. We were coming up with unique inclusion strategies and recruitments and exposure and programs and whatnot. So there were some really amazing experiences along the way. But being a leader, there were things that we had to measure against, and you couldn't always accomplish the things that we wanted to. And I would sit in the seat, and I'll tell you, I had a good reputation, but also one for being a little bit of a rabble rouser. I would push back a little bit. Shaquille O'Neal started to call me Shidel Castro because I wore it like a badge of honor. I loved it. So I sat in a seat where I could push and poke a bit, and now I do that as well. And being a consultant and working with different leagues and networks, and when I see that we're headed down a myopic path of hiring people who all look alike or all have the same background, I'm often the person who will say, hey, wait a minute, do we see a trend here? Can we think differently? Can we stop down and zoom out? Because as you're making these decisions, sometimes you're just going, an inch at a time, and you don't go, oh wait, I'm painting this picture that looks all one way. But I have the luxury of sort of having a little bit of that reputation and being comfortable with asking the right questions to try to lead leaders and organizations down a path. They don't always agree. I don't always win. But as long as we've had this fruitful conversation and they can stand by the decisions that they're making, then I feel like the work, has been done. But, there was a time when there was a leader who wanted to handle something a certain way, and I really thought that was my breaking point, and I got great advice from the woman who runs DEI at CNN, Janita Dew. She's been there for a long time, and she kind of talked me off of the ledge and said, we can be stronger here if you stay and continue to push and poke from the inside than if you use this as sort of your cross to bear and say, hey, I'm out of here because I don't like that decision you're making. So it gets tricky, but there is a path, and I've also seen really, really great examples of allyship that always gave me hope and faith. I'll tell you just one small tidbit. Now that I'm a consultant in my own company, I have the great fortune of representing the legacy of the great Bill Russell. I hope you all know who Bill Russell is, the winningest champion of all time. Such an incredible man, an incredible athlete, but an even better human being and man, and all of the things that he did for the civil rights movement and what he saw in his lifetime. He's passed away now. He passed away about 4 years ago. When all of this started to happen with the new administration, and I was starting to see things being knocked down and unfunded and feeling frustrated, and after the election, for Halloween I dressed up as I was Kamala, so you can imagine I was pretty devastated not to need that costume anymore. And I felt defeated, and I felt like, okay, well then forget it. All of the work that I've done to try to help and push forward and be a part of a movement has it all been for naught? And I'm tired. I heard a lot of black women say we were tired because you don't have to ask me where I voted because 95% of us were voting for the same person. And then I thought about Bill Russell, and I thought of the things that he saw in his lifetime. He went from being treated less than a human, less than a man, fighting for civil rights. He marched with Martin Luther King Jr. He was very good friends with Malcolm X. He did amazing, amazing things. And in his lifetime, he saw us achieve so many things that he never thought were possible, to the point of receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor from the first black president. So Bill Russell went from not being recognized as a man to seeing that in his lifetime. And then he also saw Trump be elected. So I thought, how dare I give up when someone as noble as Bill Russell was able to continue on and to see the pendulum swing back and forth and still have hope and still give his grace.
That's a great transition point, because with your comments, it kind of leads us to this idea of you not quitting and all of us not quitting as it relates to this idea of inclusion. So I put to you as a panel, what if the other side prevails? What does inclusion look like if the anti-DEI forces or anti-inclusion forces prevail? What does that look like for us going forward?
I think that we're resilient, period. I think that we will find other ways to collaborate, other ways to succeed, other ways to infiltrate. We'll be fine. We always are. We always have been. We've faced so many challenges since we've stepped foot on this country, and we'll continue pushing. I'm not worried.
Yeah, I just, so one of Nike's maxims is there's no finish line. And I guess I kind of challenged the premise of the question because I don't think it's finite. So I don't think it's a notion of victorious or not victorious, because it's a constantly present thing. So even, if you could say during the height of President Obama and everything seemed to be the opposite of this, you wouldn't then kind of take your victory lap and stop either, right? So it's a mentality that should be showing up for you as an individual and then together as a community, regardless of what a scoreboard, maybe. I never view it as a time running out. So for me, it's just it's an ongoing proposition that you just stay consistent with and kind of fight that good fight as long as you can on this earth. So.
I saw the poet Nikki Giovanni. She was here in Atlanta probably 15 years ago, obviously before she passed away. And if you're familiar with her, she's very unique, has a very unique perspective on a number of things, very thoughtful, obviously, very creative. And this entire speech that she gave was about how she wanted to go to space and visit, I think it was Mars or another planet, and she was making a case for why Black people should be the first people to visit another planet, because that's basically what we have survived in slavery, that we were brought here and we managed to survive not knowing the language, not having people that look like us, being ripped from families, and we created a culture and generations. And so she gave this entire speech about that, but it was a little tongue-in-cheek and it was very funny, but she was very emphatic about just the resilience of our culture and of our people, so I believe in that.
Yeah, and the way, Charles, you used the term, I feel as if DEI has been weaponized. To me, if we were putting the most talented people at a table, it's gonna be a diverse, inclusive table. You're not, no, DEI, whatever, call it whatever you want, DEI, no DEI. I think the best of the best is not homogenous. It doesn't look one way. It includes men, it includes women, it includes Blacks, whites, Chinese. I think the best of everything, and this is why I love working in sports, it's a meritocracy, right? You are here because you're the best at what you do, right? And I think that's what the table, I think that's what the leadership table would look like with or without DEI.
Thank you for those strong responses. That's exactly why that question was posed, to not only for you, but for all of you out here, is that it is an ongoing mission, as Steve indicated. It's not the goalpost, it's not the scoreboard. It's you deciding that every day you're gonna get up and you're gonna try to make the landscape better for the next generation. But you have to always keep that measuring stick in mind, that it all starts and stops with what you bring to the table. As Garin was talking about, it's about merit. You can earn that easily by your hard work. Just a couple of caveats before we close.
I want to just mention too what Tara mentioned earlier about being prepared. If that goes away, we've got to be even more prepared, stronger, and more equipped than ever. So just what Tara mentioned, be strong in your craft.
I like the word you used too, Yandrick, in terms of resilience. That's one of the takeaways from this that all of you should have. It's just to remain steadfast and resilient. Just a couple quick questions before we turn it over to question and answer session. And this one will start with you, Yandrick, because you've got more of an inside track on this question as it relates to your recruiting efforts amongst HBCU students. As you go from campus to campus, have you recognized any trends with regard to any level of hesitancy for students wanting to get involved in the sports profession to any degree?
It's been encouraging. I've seen my young brother here. Tyler has been at one of my events in Charlotte. It's been encouraging to see our young brothers and sisters at our events in full attendance. From Johnson C. Smith University to Howard, as I mentioned last week. We're working on Clark Atlanta and others. And actually, UNC Charlotte, where I went to school, UNC Charlotte does have the largest percent of Black students in North Carolina for PWI. It's been encouraging. So yeah, I mean, I think it's still it's powerful and encouraging, and we're going to keep pushing on.
And Tara, you made a comment a few minutes ago about the level of preparation that a student from an HBCU or any school should have as as it enters into conversation about joining an organization. I ask all of you, from an organizational perspective, have you seen any trends outside of the one that Tara mentioned as it relates to considering bringing in kids from an HBCU into your internship program or entry-level hiring at all?
I will say over the last few years, I have been just overjoyed in the number of people that are interested in a variety of jobs in journalism, production, television, radio, new media. It used to be 9 out of 10 people were only asking me about on-camera jobs. Those still exist. People are still interested in it. It's still a great career to chase. But now I do get questions about being a director, producer, writer, editorial, social, and that it really warms my heart because there's a plethora more of those types of jobs, especially as smart young journalists coming from HBCUs, than the very few on-camera positions that you could go after.
Steve, Garin, love to hear your comments, thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're fortunate, right? We're in Atlanta, and all businesses are local, and we've got the AUC. So there is no lack of talent, 3 miles away from our building. So the opportunity to hire people of color and give opportunity, it's right here, right? We have seasonal positions every single year. We have 300 to 400 full-time employees that work for us. And our hiring, by the nature of where we are and our staff, we're a very diverse staff because we're a reflection of the city. So when it comes to our recruiting and all that, I think the world has caught up to Atlanta, right? Because I think the Falcons are similar in terms of having probably a more diverse staff compared to other NFL teams, just because we're here. But I love the fact that maybe the rest of the world's catching up. The NBA started a Pathways program where they're recruiting for HBCUs and providing summer-long internships. Sekou Smith, who's a writer who passed away during COVID, is a former HBCU alum. We have a summer internship program with a small scholarship in his name. I know Turner has one, and there are programs that are specific, but I think we don't even need that just because of where we're located in our city.
Yeah, Ron touched on some of the official programs that we have. I think I even see a few of our HBCU fellows in the room, right now. And I think what's cool about what we're seeing is, and I feel this is the most talented generation, bar none, right? I mean, the kind of model for us was do well in school, get internships, get some business cards, and that's kind of your path to success, even if it's a difficult journey. What you guys are doing outside of the classroom, teaching yourself how to code, learning Mandarin, what you're adding to your toolkit is exceptional. And that's important because it is also the most competitive landscape that it's ever been. So to that notion of preparation, standing out, I think you guys are doing that. I think another thing that I'm appreciating and seeing is sports, like music, like fashion, these entertainment-based niche industries forever kind of not exploited, but definitely realized the leverage that it had over its talent, especially its young talent. It was almost a badge of pride of unpaid internships, like this grind that you had to go through. And I think one of the, silver linings of obviously the tragedy of COVID is it really, compelled, in particular, the Gen Z generation to kind of raise their hand and say, yes, we want to pursue these things, but we're expecting more of you, organization, back to us. And I think that caused some good kind of look in the mirror for the sports industry of our salaries, in particular for junior employees, were under indexing compared to some other industries. And we were losing talent that were saying, we love sports, but I'm going to go work over here in engineering or over here in finance and just watch your game on TV, and that's enough. We realized we had to adjust our talent strategy to modernize it to where our talent was. And I think that's an important kind of representation of this notion of inclusion. There's a lot of strength that you have too, right? So continue to leverage that strength. That does not come at the exclusion of preparation, but trust your preparation, but continue to vocalize what matters to you and hold organizations like us accountable for making sure that we're serving your needs too, because the most important resource of any organization is its talent, right? And I think sometimes people forget that, and so continue to invest in yourself and speak up when you can.
Okay. I think Steve must be a former basketball, sorry, Shannon. Let's be a basketball player with great defensive skills, because every time I anticipate asking a question, he's already there blocking me to the basket. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, was give each of you a chance to kind of provide a closing statement or thoughts with regard to our topic. And Garin, we'll go with you.
Go with me. Caught me off guard, not gonna lie. I'm thankful to be a part of today and being here on campus, which I've been in Atlanta for 13 years. I've probably been on campus 2 or 3 times. So just being here and, you guys are seeing us, we're seeing you guys, and a room that's taking time on a Monday night to learn more about journalism, sports, where you guys want to be is important. I'm old enough to be able to say that when I was your age and I went to a PWI, went to the University of Florida, and I loved it, but there weren't things like this going on, period. There weren't these sort of opportunities. So I love the fact that you guys are maximizing your time here and attending something like this, and that, Professor Thomas and his team has provided this opportunity. So just keep maximizing your time while you're on this campus. My parents told me, and I think we've all kind of hinted at this, we have to work twice as hard, right? I don't know if that's true, but the preparation that we're talking about, if you work twice as hard and you're prepared and all that, you have a greater chance and opportunity than generations previous. So maximize your time here and maximize the opportunity that you guys have in life and in this city.
Just like, we're talking about sports, you think about the best athletes, they succeed, they make it to the NBA or the NFL or the PGA, not by just attending practice, the 1-hour practice and all of that. What happens is they succeed by pushing themselves and doing things outside of practice. So the same goes for you all. Continue doing the work outside of your regular hours that you attend class and your homework. Do more. Push yourself to do more, to be that great athlete, that great student. Push yourself to do more. And lastly, for me, I'm not in the spaces that they are in, but don't take no for an answer. I know we hear that all the time. Just create your own path, as I have. I have my nonprofit. I also have a sports podcast that we've started, and we will have Tara on. We have got Ron Artest and Meta War Peace, if you guys know who he is, and Dennis Scott and others. And I just chose my own path. I would not be denied. So don't be denied.
I think we can't say it enough. It's the preparation. You guys know who Reggie Miller is? Great basketball player, Hall of Famer. Little known fact about Reggie Miller, when he was young, had braces on his legs, and the doctor said that he would never walk straight. He had some type of bone issue, and he had braces on his legs. And he had an older brother, an older sister, then Reggie, and then a younger brother and a younger sister. And they were all highly competitive, highly athletic. So he would be in the backyard playing basketball against his brothers and sisters with the braces on his legs, and got better and better and better. He was not better than Cheryl for a very long time. He wasn't even the best basketball player in the house, but he put in the work. He started working on his three-point shot because he wasn't that great. But he put in the work over and over and over again. His legs healed, and then the rest is history. He becomes one of the best basketball players ever. So it's about putting in the work. You do not have to be Michael Jordan. You do not have to be LeBron. You don't have to be the best. You can put in the work to outwork someone else. It's possible.
Thank you.